Okay, so we're here once again in Sword Factory X, and if you guys remember back to one of my older videos, we actually ranked every enchant in the game from worst to best. However, recently we have got some brand new enchants to the game, so I thought it's probably best to actually redo this video and re-rank every single enchant in the game from worst to best. And there's actually 11 enchants in the game right now, which is actually kind of crazy. So let's just go straight into it and start off with number 11, the worst enchant that's actually in the game, and that is Sus. Now, there will be a lot of people who do complain about this because obviously it is just kind of like a meme enchant. However, in terms of actual function, well, it doesn't really have a function, does it? It just basically makes a sound. Now, obviously, Sus is the rarest enchant in the game, and obviously it does have a lot of trade value, so a lot of people might actually put this higher on the list just for the fact that it has value. However, for an actual enchant, it doesn't do anything, so it has no function whatsoever, basically meaning that it's not even really an enchant. It's more or less just like a kind of a waste of a space for an enchant, I guess you could say. Now, obviously, again, it is 1 in 5 billion chance of getting it. However, it doesn't really have a function, so for that reason I am going to go ahead and actually put this at number 11 as the worst enchant in the game. Now moving on to number 10. This was the worst enchant last time in the last video, and that is Swiftness. Now, in terms of actual function in the game, jump power doesn't really have anything to do with the game right now. I do believe they are meant to be adding in something at some point to basically mean that Swiftness will have some sort of use. However, right now with the current state of the game, there is absolutely no use for Swiftness at all, because we don't need to jump anywhere at all. We literally just need to run places and stuff like that. So in terms of Swiftness and in terms of jump power, it's not really needed. So yeah, Swiftness is going to be put on number 10 and basically the worst enchant that's actually got a function. So yeah, moving on now to number 9, and this one was actually a little bit difficult because I know some people will find this kind of useful. However, I have gone ahead and put Soulbound at the number 9 spot. Now, the only reason why I've ranked Soulbound so low is just for the fact that as of now, for players like myself and still a lot of other players as well, Soulbound isn't really that useful anymore, because when you've got a lot of health anyways, you're not going to die, so you're not going to lose your sword. And on top of that as well, for Soulbound, it's only a chance of keeping your sword, which basically means that even if you don't have enough health to kill some bosses and you might die to a boss, you've only got a chance of keeping your sword, which means that it can still be lost, which basically means that obviously you're not exactly guaranteed to keep your sword anyways. So yeah, it's a little bit of a difficult one to rank. However, I am going to keep it at number 9 as for a lot of players it's not really needed anymore, and for those players who do need it, it's not exactly that great because it's only a chance of keeping your sword. Now moving on to the number 8 spot, and this is one of the new ones from the last update, that is looting. Now, on the outside, looting seems like it'll be a very, very good enchant, that it gets you better stats and stuff from when you kill bosses and mobs. However, it's not actually that great. I've used it a couple times and I've really not seen any difference in any of the swords that I've actually gotten. In terms of when I've killed bosses, I've always got the exact same things. Now, maybe sometimes I might get copper instead of bronze or whatever. I'm not really too sure what's better. Yeah, sometimes I might get bronze instead of copper, but still, it's honestly not that great. And obviously it is one of the new ones, so it has a level cap of 8, so it's another one that's really difficult to actually upgrade anyways. But overall, it's not exactly that fantastic, so realistically I am going to put looting at number 8, just for the fact that I've not exactly seen what it can actually do yet, and it seems like the fact that the chance of actually getting these things is fairly low. Now we're moving on to the number 7 spot, and again this one is going to be up for debate because of a lot of people might think this is pretty important. However, I have gone ahead and put Resistance at number 7. So basically, Resistance just increases your health. Now this can actually be a very big buff if we go ahead now and go over to my last damage sword, comparing it to my new damage sword, as you can see, my new damage sword actually has 25 trillion health without resistance. However, this old damage sword here has resistance 33, and if we equip that real quick, it actually gives me nearly 100 trillion health, which is actually a massive boost. Now obviously I'm bigging it up right now, making it seem like a really good enchant. However, the only reason why I'm putting it at number 7 is just for the fact that most of the time you're not exactly going to need resistance, and honestly for me right now 25 trillion health is more than enough. Even when it comes to things like neon bosses, like neon supreme bosses and stuff like that, 25 trillion health usually gets me through the boss fairly quickly anyways. So realistically, when it comes to a lot of high level players anyways, resistance honestly isn't really that important, because once you start leveling up a lot anyways, you do get more health. And obviously if I go ahead and drop my sword real quick, I do actually have 150 million health already, and obviously it bumps it up to 25 trillion. So honestly, resistance isn't that important. It can be important for some new players, however once you start to get a really good damage sword, it starts to bring the level down a little bit. Now we're moving on to number 6, and this is again another one of the new ones, and that is glittering. Now again, when it comes to glittering, it's not exactly that overpowered as it might seem. However, for grinding gems, especially for the newer players, glittering is going to be a very good enchant. Now, it is only a chance of getting some increased gems. However, once you do start to get those increased gems, it really does add a nice boost onto it. When I used it beforehand, I think realistically you get around 6 gems per boss kill. However, when glittering does kick in, you get around 30 gems, which is a nice 5 times boost. So if you are going around grinding up for gems, glittering can really be a nice overpowered enchant, and it can get you a nice little boost on top of your gems that you might already be getting from your time rewards and stuff like that. And obviously once you get your time rewards, you get around 3,000 gems. So then all you need to do is get a glittering sword, go around, kill some bosses, get another 1,000 gems, and you might be able to get a unique sword, which honestly is going to be a very nice start for the newer players, meaning then that you're going to basically get a quad spawn without having to actually get a quad spawn, which is really good. So I'm going to put glittering at number 6. Now we're moving on to number 5, and I would say this is probably the best of the rest, and that is speed. Now again, speed is probably one of the ones that you probably want on your damage sword. However, obviously you can just have a normal speed sword anyways. However, I would say that speed is probably a necessary enchant that you're going to need when it comes to quad spawns, especially for those people who do play in public servers like myself. Obviously every time a quad spawn happens, it's always a massive race to get down to the boss as quickly as possible, so you're always going to want the highest amount of speed, and on top of that as well, you're probably going to want the game pass as well. However, speed is going to be very important. If you don't have speed, even just the enchant, honestly you're not going to get the boss at all, because there's always going to be someone out there who does have the speed enchant, and they're going to always get there first. So realistically, speed is actually one of the most important enchants in the game, especially for those people who do want to go ahead and get quad spawns, just for the fact that you need to be there first, otherwise you're probably going to never get there in the first place. So yeah, speed is a very important enchant, and I'm going to put that at number 5. Now we're moving on basically to the best enchants in the games, and I would say that these ones are all probably necessary enchants that you're going to need when it comes to the specific parts of them. And obviously these 4 do kind of like intertwine with each other, and they work best when they are together. However, we're going to move on to them right now, and at number 4 we also have the new enchant of Overdrive. Now the reason why I put Overdrive at number 4, and I think is actually such an important enchant, is the fact that you can get so much more value out of your swords when it comes to your quad spawns and stuff like that. So if we go over here real quick to my ascender like so, As you can see right now, we do have just this random sword of it, well, this supreme sword over here, that is currently maxed out at level 351. However, if I had overdrive on this, I could increase that level and get a lot more value on my sword, especially this sword over here. As you can see, this is currently, well, it's not actually maxed out right now. We'll go ahead and max it out real quick. As you can see, we got a nice 1.6 trillion boost on top of that. So basically, imagine you getting your looting up to even just your overdrive up to even overdrive 5. That's another massive 20 levels, which is obviously then for me going to be a nice little 20 trillion boost on top of that. And then on top of that as well, if you go ahead then and use your cash boost and you have more cash on top of that as well, it's going to be a massive boost. If I go ahead now and actually use the cash boost, it's going to go ahead and make that 20 trillion become 40 trillion, and this sword's going to be worth so much more. And just, yeah, overdrive is seriously important, especially for those quad spawn kills, and that's the reason why I've got it in one of the top spots, just for the fact that it's going to bring so much more value to the game, and everybody is going to want to need this overdrive enchant on every single quad spawn boss you get, without a doubt. Now we're moving on to number 3, and this is one of the essentials for your damage sword, and that is power. So power basically slightly increases your damage and your health, and obviously everybody needs the maximum amount of damage possible, and that is basically why you need to get power on there. The more damage you get on your damage sword, the better it is. Obviously that's just kind of how it goes. And on top of that as well, it does give you more health. So obviously if I did not have power on my sword right now, as you can see, it is a 131 trillion damage sword. If I didn't have power on it, it'll probably be around like 70 trillion, 80 trillion damage, and I'll probably be only sitting around like 5 trillion HP as well, which honestly is just going to be such an L. So yeah, power is really important, especially for those damage swords, and it's also just one of the essentials that you're going to need on your damage sword. And there's always the 3 essentials that people do look for. One of them is always power, just for the fact that it has the damage and health increase. So yeah, that's always going to be at number 3. Now we're moving on to number 2, and again this is one of the essential ones for quad spawns, that is greed. So basically what greed does is it increases the worth or the value of the sword, and the reason you always want this is just because it gives such a massive boost to the value of your swords. It is so insane. So if we come over here real quick, just to one of these random swords down here, say we're looking at this 90 trillion value sword over here. If I actually had greed on this sword instead of like speed or something, this sword will probably be worth around 130, maybe even 140 trillion, just because it has greed on there. And that's how much of a boost greed actually gives. Depending on the sword that you actually have and the value on it, you can actually maybe get like another like 30%, 40% boost on that value, just because you have greed on there. And that honestly shows how important greed can be. And usually when it comes to me actually upgrading my swords without teleporting around like that, usually I'll leave the enchants till last, especially if it has greed on it, just because it can really impact the value of the sword. So usually if I don't go ahead and actually do the enchants and I leave the enchants till last and it has greed on it, this sword here could probably be worth around 50 trillion, and then I'd obviously go ahead and do all of the enchants and it would boost it up so much. And honestly, greed is literally the most important enchant when it comes to anything in terms of selling swords. If you're going to go ahead and sell your sword, pray to the Lord that it has greed on it, just because it's going to have so much more value, and the more value you have in your sword, the more experience you get as well from it. So yeah, greed honestly is the most important sword for those who do selling. And yeah, now we're moving on to the last enchant, and this is the most important enchant in the game, and it probably will always be at the number 1 spot, and that is sharpness. Now this is a necessary enchant for your damage swords. If you do not have sharpness on your damage sword, it is not a damage sword. Nobody will ever consider it a damage sword, just for the fact that it doesn't have sharpness on it. So For a damage sword, you always want the maximum amount of damage out of it, and obviously that's what sharpness does, is it increases the damage by a massive amount. And yeah, if you don't have sharpness on it, it's not a damage sword whatsoever. You may as well go ahead and just fling that one out of the window. And usually when it comes around to people buying some damage swords and stuff, you always want sharpness on it. Say this one here right now, this has a sharpness on it, obviously I would go ahead and pick that up and use that as a damage sword. However, I'm pretty sure all of these have sharpness. However, this one here, as you can see, doesn't have sharpness on it, so I wouldn't even look at it, just because what's the point? If it doesn't have sharpness on it, it's genuinely not a damage sword whatsoever. And yeah, it just gives such a massive bonus to your damage. And obviously, once again, it's for those people who do go out for quad spawns, as well as those people who do just kind of hunt down some high level bosses anyways. Obviously, the more damage you do, the quicker you can kill the boss, and the more damage you do, obviously the better chance you have of actually getting the boss as well. So yeah, that's basically all the enchants re-ranked with all of the new enchants in the game. Let me know what you guys think, and if we are just quickly going to go over that list one more time. At number 11 we have Sus, number 10 is Swiftness, number 9 is Soulbound, number 8 is Looting, number 7 is Resistance, number 6 is Glittering, number 5 is Speed, number 4 is Overdrive, number 3 is Power, number 2 is Greed, and number 1 is Sharpness. Let me know what you guys think of that list, and if you have any opinions that you'd like to share in the comments, go ahead and do so. Let me know what you guys think and where you would actually rank your enchants instead. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.